Welcome to Magic Without Fears, Bob Freeman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You're the occult detective online.
Yeah,
and in life.
Yes, I write fiction, occult detective fiction, and I am something of a paranormal investigator. So yeah, I wear the occult detective badge proudly. So
I love it. When did you first become the occult detective?
Well, yeah, that's interesting. So probably officially 1986, which is ironically enough when the current season of Stranger Things is taking place.
That was a big year.
If you watch Stranger Things, I live in Indiana, right? So when I watch that show, I'm watching my childhood. But in '86, my friends and I used to hang out at this shelter house at the Mississinawa State Forest, which is a very haunted, sacred Native American land. And we'd like to party out there, and I will admit that substances were being consumed. And a CO came up upon us, and he started asking us a lot of strange questions about the occult. And I thought, oh, okay, here we go, satanic panic. But I started explaining my beliefs to him and, pretty much won him over. And then he said, well, do you want to see something weird? Okay, So me and my best friend, we followed him out through the woods along a trail. And in the middle of a clearing was a campfire. And near it was a pentagram, a cat crucified, all the typical self-styled Satanist trappings that you would expect to see from kids that listen to a lot of Ozzy Osbourne and were deciding they were going to worship the devil. So I looked over the scene, explained to him what I thought was going on, and so I guess in that instance I was an occult detective called in by the authorities to investigate a crime scene, and I used my expertise to help them figure it out. And then they started calling me, and I investigated a few other such situations for them. And there I was after that, that's what was kind of my thing. So.
Wow. Going back to '86, and Indiana is where Stranger Things is set.
It is, yeah. Actually, they released a book here recently, and they pinpointed exactly where Hawkins, Indiana is. And oddly enough, it's about 30 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. So yeah, it was like they do a really good job on that show of capturing what life was like in this area in that time frame. It was rough. It was rough years. I play Dungeons and Dragons. I have played Dungeons and Dragons since 1978. I'm still playing with the same guys I was playing with in 1978.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So, so we were raked through the coals, as you can well imagine, in that time period. So, but we came out on the other side of it. Okay. I remember, I'll tell you a quick little story. 1983. We're sitting in the cafeteria of my local high school. I would have been, in 83, I was a senior. So we used to talk magic all the time. I was deep into it. The other kids, not as much, but peripherally. They read H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, all that kind of stuff. And, I would bring books in and we would discuss different topics. Well, as a joke one day, we pulled out a Hostess snack cake, and I committed a ritual sacrifice of a ho-ho, and everybody was laughing and it was real funny, but so people started talking. And so suddenly we became those people, Well, we decided, a friend of mine had bought a copy of the Simon Necronomicon. All right. In fact, that very copy is right behind me. Yeah, look at that, right on the shelf. This is the very book that he had brought. And we decided we were going to perform a ritual from it. And we got 13 of our friends together, and we went out to the Mississinawa Reservoir to a place called Goose Creek. And all right, so it was a very cloudy night of a full moon. The person that was going to perform the ritual parked at the top. I took everybody else down this old derelict road. I should explain the reservoir. There used to be an art commune down there called Somerset. Now is underwater. But when they let the water out in the fall, you've got all the old roads and derelict buildings and stuff. It's really creepy. But so we go down this road, and I'm setting up circles of protection to put the spectators within so they won't be harmed by anything that we do. Well, as we come down this road, the water's, completely low. There's all these dead trees, reaching up to the sky. They look like accusing fingers pointing to the heavens. And suddenly the clouds parted around the moon, and it looked like an inverted pentagram framing it. And one of the girls just freaks out. And then somebody else said, "Why are there dead fish everywhere?" And it was covering this road, and that's because the water had lowered and the fish died. But and then somebody says, "Oh, wait, isn't the fish the symbol of Jesus? Oh my God, what do we do? We shouldn't be doing this." And so they're freaking themselves out already. Well, we perform the ritual. It goes awry. People are screaming. People are running for their lives. It was all good fun, right? But then by the time we got back to school, the rumors around the high school was that we were sacrificing children, worshiping the devil. And so it got so bad that I got called into the principal's office on the day that I was supposed to be admitted into the National Honor Society. And he explained to me that he was not going to allow me to be inducted because I was worshiping the devil. And so I'm really upset, and I go and I talk to one of my teachers. So a bunch of the teachers got together and they marched down there, and they demanded that I be allowed in because I was basically a good kid, and you can't keep me out just because of some harmless pranks that kids were doing. So I was, eventually I was allowed into the National Honor Society, but that's what the 80s were like in Indiana and in most places around the country, I suppose. So at that time period.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
I know
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yeah. 86 was when I graduated from my big wheel to a bicycle. And and so I have very good memories of that year and life at that time. And my parents had played D&D in the 70s, but had to stop once I was born, or my mom had to stop once I was born. She thought she wouldn't have to, but she didn't realize how much work it would be.
Right.
Especially like I was really sick because I was undiagnosed celiac. So I was like, the doctors thought I was going to die the first few years. I was just screaming in pain my whole childhood, basically, until I got a little bit older. And yeah.
So now you're like a gluten-free diet and all that now?
Yeah.
My son is as well, right? So he has it's a challenge.
It is. Like I have to be careful with even just basic grains like rice and stuff. So but you feel so much better once you make the switch that it doesn't matter. You wouldn't consider going back to it. Like it's
right. So just to protect him, we basically I eat a gluten-free diet as well, right? But if I'm out somewhere and I just grab something, I can feel it immediately.
Yeah.
I can feel it affect me, and I think, wow, so they're really doing something wrong to the grain, right? So
yeah, grains become 200% more glutinous on average in the last 100 years. 100 years ago, celiacs died around the age of 3 to 6.
Right.
Yeah. And then like in the 20s, we lived to 9. By the 50s, we lived to usually our teenage years. So my dad was diagnosed with sprue, which is celiac disease in 1952. In 53, he was diagnosed, one of the early cases. Yeah, but he refused to believe that his kids could have it. So he made sure doctors never found out that he had it when they were diagnosing me and my sister. So that was fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. There's a reason
That's
we don't all
the thing.
talk anymore.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
sorry about that.
he believed this is a spiritual. Let's take it back into this. This leads us right back into the occult. Actually, it's because they were part of the Maharishi thing. They were into training, all of that. Yeah, right. So instantaneously, we're back to this. Well, it was a spiritual reason. Actually, it was a spiritual reason for withholding medical information, because the belief is if people didn't know, the kids didn't know what disease they had, they would transcend it through their meditating. And we were meditating at early ages, at 7, after the full initiation and everything. And
Right.
I can tell you this, transcendentalizing pain can help you not suffer as much, but it certainly doesn't fix the problem.
Right.
Anyway, it didn't in our case. But enough of that. Yeah, so I didn't start playing D&D till 89, and didn't really realize that magic was a real thing until a couple years later. And then it just went from there. What got you first into like accepting the reality of magic and its sort of role in history, which has been so well hidden from us in plain view?
Yeah. So it started for me when I was 8 years old. Okay. And so when I was a kid, I used to spend the night at my grandparents' house quite a bit. And in the bedroom that I slept in was this old trunk, and it housed my great grandmother's things. She was in a nursing home. And so I decided one night I'm just going to dig through this trunk, and it was full of astrological charts and different like religious tracts. And I came across this book called Unseen Forces by Manly Palmer Hall. And it had, just like a really vivid illustration on it. The book was from like 1946, I think, this particular tract. So I sat and read that, and it was all about elementals, basically undines and salamanders and all this, and the dweller at the threshold. And I'm reading this, and I'd always been interested in fantasy, and I read comics and all this. But as I'm reading this, I realize that this person is explaining something that's real. And so I immediately believed it because I wanted it to be true, right? And so here's this book telling me that it is. And I'm a little kid enough that I buy it hook, line, and sinker. So I immediately started trying to find other books. And so at the Converse Library, they have a Carnegie Library there. This is a small town population of, at that time, it was about 1,000 people. It's a little less than that now. But they had, and again, this is the early 70s, but they had Gerald Gardner, they had a bunch of Sybil Leek stuff. So there was plenty of things for me to read and learn. And so I started adapting witchcraft as I read from these books, and kind of merged them with Norse mythology, because I had read a book called The Children of Odin that I was really taken with. And I realized that my ancestors would have worshipped those gods, right? We came from Scandinavia, Scotland, England, Ireland, totally Northern European. And so I just adapted whatever rituals I could find from witchcraft and replaced, the Celtic gods that they generally dealt with, or Greek gods, and replaced them with the equivalent Norse deities and perform rituals and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got my start.
Yeah, that's cool. I also, my first love was the Futhark ruins that I would cast every night before I went to bed. I'd read them and make a note in my diary, and that was how I sort of really got into something. There wasn't as many books though back then on the Norse stuff. There was like a little Norse magic book. There certainly wasn't the publishing wave that you have now, it seems like. So I'm not too familiar with the North stuff, despite my early interest in it. And now it seems like I see authors like these, see books like The Hanged God, that must be Norse.
Right.
That's like, I don't know the literature, so I'm thinking you might be able to give me some view of what's going on with it now, because it seems like there's a lot of exciting stuff going on in Norse magic and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, right. So yeah, like you said, there was not much. And then like when stuff first came out, it was like DJ Conway, right? Had a book on magic. And and all that was redressed Wicca, right? Yeah. So she did the same thing that I did in elementary school, and she's mass marketing this. And then Ed Fitch had a book where basically he did the same thing. The lesser ritual, the pentagram, the banishing ritual, right? He just copied that and called it the hammer rite and used hammer symbology. And I'm like, wait, I've read enough Golden Dawn stuff. I recognize what you're doing here. And, and he's calling it this ancient rite, brought down, and so all the early Norse stuff was just poppycock, so it was really hard to get through all that. So basically, and I'm not that impressed with most of the stuff that comes out now, to be honest. But if you're into the Norse thing, then just reading the Havamal and the Eddas, that's pretty much all you need to do. Everything you need is there. Read the old sagas. You're never going to recreate rituals as they were done then because there's no record of them.
Yeah.
So you just have to kind of, the way I look at it is, it's a modern age, create modern rituals. It should be personal anyway.
Yeah.
I have a problem with, doing magic by instruction manual, So, I mean, I did when I was young, but as I've gotten older, and I'm getting near 60 now, and I had a lot of success. And I guess maybe it's because I did all that as a young man that I've gotten to the point now where I can do magic by intuition rather than by, something laid out for me by past masters. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any of these fancy new Norse books coming out? Are there not any you recommend or think are really great that have stood out to you? I don't know, maybe you haven't checked them out.
No, see, because I get sent them a lot, right? So I do book reviews for Llewellyn and Weiser. And so anytime a Norse book comes through, they immediately will send it to me. Say, hey, review this. And so if you'll notice on my website, occultdetective.com, you don't see a lot of reviews of the Norse books because I don't do negative reviews. So if you're not seeing me review those books, it's because I've read them, and I don't want to encourage you to buy them, right? So off the top of my head, I can't think of anything really that's come out recently. I know there's got to be something, but it's just not coming to me right now. The Edred Thorson stuff, right? I would recommend any of that, but that's not really new. But they re-release that stuff all the time.
Yeah, I have his rune.
He's a problematic individual, but he knows what he's talking about, and that's half the battle. So
yeah, I know. I saw once on his Wikipedia it was listed he had like connections to, I don't know if it's mentioned KKK or some other white supremacy stuff. And I saw he was on Facebook, and this was years ago. So I actually just asked him about it, which might have been a mistake. I was like, I read your Wikipedia,
So and what did he say about that?
His he reacted as you'd expected, very cautious, contained. My assumption obviously was that it was people messing with him, because, you know, when I read it, I remember thinking,
It's
like,
Wikipedia.
who would, you know, and in those years, it was hard for me to imagine anyone having anything to do with that kind of stuff. Of course, it wasn't all the rage that it seems to be now. Now, I don't even
Well,
know. I don't even know how to talk about it.
I know that he was in the LeVay's Church of Satan. I know that he was in the Temple of Set, right? So it always was weird to me how you marry those things together, you know. So, but it was also, you got to remember the time it was, right? So if you're young and you're coming up and you're looking for groups to belong to, you know, and you're wanting to do group magic, you know, okay, you take me for instance, right? I live in, you know, the Bible Belt, you know, so finding a group of people to work with was nearly impossible. So I ended up being in an Alexandrian witchcraft coven for a brief time, because that's the only people I could find. So I would venture to guess that the same thing was true of Flowers, right? That he's looking for a group, he finds, you know, Satanists, he's with them, then he graduates over and he's looking for a group to belong to.
Mm.
And so I don't know if you can hold that against him, because like I said, if you know, we want to belong, right? We want like-minded people around us. And so if you're looking to perform magic in a group, you do, you know, I'm not exactly, you know, a big fan of Alexander's.
Yeah.
But that's what was afforded me, you know, at that time, you know, when I'd first gone to college, that was the group that was there. So
yeah, you got to sort of do what you can do. I remember our high school Wiccan coven, we eventually had to let this dude in who was calling himself a Satanist, because there was just no one else. And my buddy was like, it's him or it's just us. I'm like,
yeah, right.
All right,
right.
he wants to do ritual, as long as he's not trying to do Satanist stuff at our Wiccan midsummer rites. And he's like, no, man, he just wants to, you know, do magic. It's like, okay, we'll give it a try. You know, and the guy was fine. We became friends for decades. You know, he did, sure, all his spells were about sexual potency or love. It's like, but
right.
you know, that's what you get from 14-year-olds, right? 15-year-olds.
Mine
was all, my spells were always for spiritual transformation, insight, wisdom, and stuff. But they were always, yeah. You know, what was interesting was the kind of results we were generating at our get-togethers and rituals and stuff. That's what was crazy. Was how we were, and we got into serious testings of ourselves. So you can still get a lot done, even if you're not necessarily working with people whose goals in life or souls are completely aligned with yours, I think.
Right. I agree totally. And sometimes that's good for your spirituality, right? It tests. And you never know. That's one of the problems with like the modern kind, I hate to use the term cancel culture, but you know what I mean. The problem with that is you don't get the opportunity to change someone, right? To help them on the path, right? If you're there, a good example for them.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, pardon me.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just saying that if you're canceling people and pushing them away and ostracizing them, then how are they ever going to become better if you're not there to help them become better? Now, obviously, there are some people that, you know, would cross a line where you're not going to allow them. But, you know, I think most people can be redeemed. And they never can be redeemed if you're putting them in a box.
Yeah.
And throwing them away.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I accept people as they are. I try to, you know, and until they cross a line, and everybody's going to have a different line. But yeah, the whole point is why we do this, is to become better individuals And I think you become a better individual through becoming a better community, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely it does. I agree. I agree. And that's one of the things like that I think we need to somehow try and do is, you know, just is keep disagreeing with each other without trying to destroy each other. It just doesn't work, really, as far as I can tell. I mean, it just begets like I had to go through like the Golden Dawn Wars in the 90s in a really serious way.
Right.
And like it was not fun. I mean, I mostly you know, I wasn't really involved in it. I was too young. I was too young and too focused on the actual studies we were doing, but that stuff was going on, you know.
Right.
And it was just it was a nightmare. It was really unpleasant. And I think a lot about how it might have been avoided, you know. But it's really hard when you have a few people, just like a couple bad eggs, a couple rotten apples, just trying to, you know, so many people come into the occult and see a chance to take advantage of others by claiming titles and knowledge and power, and then lording it over other people, and they think that that's actually what it's about. I mean, you actually did an article recently on one such influencer that shocked a lot of people. I noticed a lot of the young occultists I've talked to. I did an interview with, of course, River the Nemeton, and a lot of people were surprised to see, I think, an adult comment on the situation. I think that's what caught people off guard about you're the occult detective posts you know, what's going on with this wiser gr darling thing, and people, I saw the youngins sort of go, oh my god, this is actually like something people are really aware of. And I'm like, yeah, people are aware of this stuff, because you think we're not watching what's going on when you know, if we see people crying on Instagram because mobs of people have bullied them for reading Evola or something, right?
Right.
Like, are they yeah, so you know, then people notice that. You think all of us don't notice that that's how you're using your influence to like bring people to tears and bully and threaten them? Yeah. And you're going to hear from us eventually when the shit hits the fan, and the shit definitely hit the fan, eh?
It really did. It was I was very thankful that I was able to get Wiser to actually comment on it. And I thought they had a very reasoned response. Because I mean that could have gotten really ugly for them as well, you know. And I when they were attacking the publisher, you know, when it evolved into that, it's like, you people don't understand how publishing works. Of course, you know, they offered Georgina a deal because she had influence, right? She had a following. Publishers are in the business of selling books. And I guarantee you her book would have sold,
Yeah.
right? It would have sold well. And publishers need money, especially now. You know, it's so, you know, so for every you know, for every Jason Miller book, you've got to have, you know, something a little more pop oriented, something, you know, for the masses, and that's how those publishers stay alive. So, but and people forget just how young these kids are. My goodness, when I would hate. I'm so thankful there wasn't the internet when I was, you know, 20 years old. I'm sure I said a lot of stupid. I guarantee you, I said a lot of stupid stuff, and I probably believed a lot of stupid things. We evolve, you know, and now they're just on display, and they make mistakes, and you know, they're young enough. They can still be helped, but you know, you look and see what happened to her, and you know, there's a part of me that, you know, that thinks, you know, somebody should be reaching out and helping her, but instead she's doubling down because she's being attacked. And so by her doubling down, you know, it's going to be hard for her to come back with any real redemption. And I just, I prefer a redemption arc. I always do. I always want people to be better.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes years, though, I guess, especially when people are at the stage where they haven't yet learned that glorious adult lesson in life, where all you have to do is be like, whoa, I'm really sorry, I was wrong.
Yes.
Apologizing is adult superpower, right? It works. Yeah. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
My life changed when I learned it.
Yeah. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
That's just, that's a heartfelt apology is maybe the strongest magic of all. All right. So the whole thing was a bloody mess. And there are certain people that just stir that up and they enjoy the drama of it. And I'm sure you see that and know people, and that's what the internet breeds, and that's what social media breeds. And that's too bad, because social media is brilliant and wonderful. Without it, we wouldn't be connecting, right?
No, mostly I focus on that aspect of social media. Like, I have amazing conversations with people all the time that I've never met. It's all through these things. And that's what I focus on. Like, I was on the way to just D&D last night. One guy from Instagram, calls me as I'm getting off the bus. I'm like, because I'm pretty open. I'm available.
Right.
He calls, we've never met. And we chatted as I went into the place and had a great little chat. It's wonderful. I like that aspect of it. The fighting and in the nasty side of it is something that appeals to a different type of person than us. And the question, I think, maybe is sometimes, how can we maybe give those people a sense that there's another way? It would be nice to be able to help people prevent these things or avoid these pitfalls.
Right.
I've tried.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. I mean, that's why we're here, is to help people. And through helping others, you help yourself. And I don't know, I guess, maybe again, it's because I got more gray than dark these days. And so I've just seen it,
Yeah.
And we're not in junior high school anymore. Come on, people.
I think that was the real mistake, was thinking that the high school politics you can get away with on Twitter would play in the real world. But unfortunately, the real world is a much different place than Twitter.
Right. And the thing is it's not isolated to any one group, right? As you play Dungeons and Dragons, as I do, you see the same thing there. I enjoy comics. You see the same thing there, right? Comics Gate and the OSR versus, it's in every little niche I'm involved in. There are those, culture wars, and it's very depressing. It's like, I'm typically a very upbeat and positive guy, and it's just like, I've got to mute you people for a while, so it's rough.
Yeah. How much do you think of the problem is this this thing that's arisen, is this idea of being like, I don't know if it comes along with the power of the influencer and having such large followings through these platforms like TikTok that generate these, mini cults of hero worshiping of the person, which is what I see happening. How much of that is due to like a conflation of the influencer status with what's supposed to be the knowledge level of the person? Like, I have all this influence there, sure, I should know all this stuff, but I'm too young to know all this stuff, so I guess I have to fake it to be an influencer. But that doesn't actually work, because then when you fake it, you cut out all the people that you actually need to learn from, because they don't want to have anything to do with people who are faking it.
All right.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
You're nailing it right on the head. I wish that those people would admit that they're learning, right? And they would be more forthcoming in that. And you say, hey, join me on my journey as I learn about this. We'll learn about it together. That's how you do it, right? But yeah, it's ego. It's all ego, and it's hard to escape that. I mean, you see it in, I'm not gonna name names, but you see all these little factions, and I think a lot of the fighting occurs because, some certain people get upset that this other group, well, this other guy has more followers than me. Why? I know more than this guy, and so his ego is bruised, so he starts attacking that person, right? And that gets a back and forth of the war, and that's how the wars start. And it's generally from a place of insecurity. The desperate need to call somebody out when they're wrong, and the fact that those people aren't honest. Yeah, it's a breeding ground. It's a swamp. It is. And I try to find a path through it.
Yeah. Do you feel it the way I feel it? That you want to, try and at least leave, the people coming after us in as good shape as possible, so that it doesn't devolve into some strange occult future of, I don't know, so many bad things can happen with ideologues and occultism, as we've seen from the 20th century. You worry about the future, or think about how you can better influence it.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you totally.
Because you're a dad, right? You just had a kid graduate. Like, this is something, right? You probably more about this kind of thinking and relationship to the world than I do, having no kids.
I was lucky, my son's 18, he'll be 19 in October. And he's a brilliant kid. I mean, just smart, well-rounded. But he was insulated from those kind of high school politics like that we discussed earlier, right? So he never had to experience that, which is good. So as a parent, that was a blessing to me. So most of his friends are older, like my age, or slightly younger, guys in their 40s. And he's a writer also, my son. Cool. And that's, as he graduated, that's like, where you're going to go to college, and that is, I want to be a writer, and that's what he's doing. And he's talented. So you learn to kind of nurture and foster that spark of creativity in him, in somebody like that. The same thing with, any extended people that you're connected to, by lifting people up, you lift yourself up, and you lift everyone around you. So that's like the best lesson I learned, just, positive reinforcement works. Negative reinforcement almost never does. So yeah. Maybe I grew up, I grew up in a house. I love my father to death, but he was very old school. He was quick to a belt, and that's, he taught you from, with a fist, so, and I definitely did not want to raise my son that way. And so, but that's the same kind of thing you see, on the internet, is that people are quick with the fist, they're quick with that negative reinforcement, and that you just don't get anywhere like that.
Yeah. Kind of depends on the platform you're on, I think.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It sort of depends on the platform. I checked out, I jumped a little bit back on Twitter recently, and yeah, that's a very negative platform. But like the people I talk to through like YouTube or Instagram, it's usually almost entirely positive, which is nice. Like 90% positive. And then, and the block button works well, the delete button works well. So, that's as far as I need to get into cancel culture. It's like, you're canceled. I squish your head.
Right. Yeah, right. I don't need the negativity, It's like I'm always saying, life is extremely short, I'm on the back end of it, and you just, and I just, it flew by so fast. It's like, I'm burying friends, like, and I'm like,
tell me about it.
I mean, I'm not that old. I still feel young. I still feel like the same, 12-year-old kid, who first rolled a D20. I feel like, I still feel that spark.
That's a secret, yeah.
But at the same time, I'm late 50s, so yeah, there's more road behind me than ahead of me, and if I can impress anything upon these young people that on the internet that are engaged in these idiosyncrasies, it's that this is gonna be gone before you know it, and then you're gonna be that 40, 50-year-old that's looking back and going, why did I waste so much time on all that negativity? And so luckily that's a lesson I learned pretty early. So but that's, maybe kids aren't doing as much hallucinogens as I did when I was young. So
you think that's certainly it?
I do think so, right? I feel that hallucinogens are the great teacher, so
yeah, I got some golden teachers right over there. I bought them at the corner store, which is now how apparently we get mushrooms in Vancouver, at the corner store.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Wow.
Yeah. They had like a whole display case, and they have like infused mushroom teas and sodas and cans and everything, just at one of the busiest intersections in Vancouver. They had another one right next door to me right here with like black and white tiled floor and a big Wonderland thing of like from Alice in Wonderland on the screen printed on top, but they didn't tell the owner that that's what they were going to be doing in the shop, so the owner was able to terminate the lease and get rid of them when the government pressured them. But you got to find a landlord that knows sort of what you're going to be up to, or that you're paying so much rent to that they don't care, right? Because they're decriminalized. And in British Columbia, I don't know if you noticed, it just announced they're decriminalizing everything on my next birthday, next January 31st. Heroin, meth, crack, MDMA, everything is getting decriminalized. And yes, as of the other day, you can't get a gun anymore. I actually even tried, because some people were saying you still have time, and I called up and they're like, no, we won't let you go through the course that would let you qualify. So they're legalizing drugs, basically, and taking away guns from non-criminals. So it's going to be an interesting future. I'm very curious to see how that plays out.
Yes. Yeah,
it's an experiment. That's definitely an experiment, isn't it?
It sure is.
Like, as long as they're only decriminalizing personal amounts, by the way, just to be specific. So it's like 2.5 grams of heroin, I guess, whatever that is. So my next birthday party, we can all do meth.
Great. Yeah, I don't. That's the right path, but I mean, I know, right? Criminalizing it, because I don't think you treat drug addiction with jail, right? So
yeah. And the stats out of Portugal are very enticing.
Where I live, I would do serious jail time if I just had a joint. So
crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so weird how different. Now, if I went into Illinois or Michigan, well, there it's legal, so those are the border states to me. So yeah, it's odd. Yeah. But I'm a proponent of, marijuana, psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, all the fun things.
Yeah. I'm excited.
I think there's a lot of
DOT
good
being supervised.
things. But my town where I live in, like I said, less than 1,000 people. I live just on the outskirts of it in a little wooded area. But a week doesn't go by that there's not somebody overdosing on fentanyl in this little town, right? We just had a murder a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
3 guys murdered a guy in the street over a drug deal. And I'm like, this is, wait a second, this is not the way it's supposed to go down. But so would legalizing drugs or decriminalizing them remove that? Well, I mean, if that guy was able to go into a store and purchase the drugs he needed, then he wouldn't be dealing with a criminal element and getting shot over owing them money.
Yeah, and you don't have the people can be safer with like the dirty drugs kills a lot of people. So like
exactly. Well, that's the deal with fentanyl, right? So they're buying heroin and they're getting fentanyl instead, right? So and that's why it's being
apparently, like here in Vancouver, apparently a lot of people, the people want the fentanyl. Like they'll only buy their meth or their heroin if it also has fentanyl, and if it doesn't, they consider that like, shitty. Which I was like, shocked to hear. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's what Michael Jackson died from, fentanyl overdose. So, that's not my cup of tea.
I'm glad it's getting decriminalized so that it's going to be easier to treat people and help people, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So growing up, right? So like I was always, I enjoyed heroic doses of hallucinogens, and like I was always surrounded by people that were wanting to party, and go out and have a good time, but I was always using drugs as a part of my spiritual progress. It was always made it a part of my ritual.
Interesting. Wow.
So I tried to avoid the social aspects of drugs. I mean, other than like marijuana, and that was different. But hallucinogens, I always treated in a very sacred way, because I recognized from the very first time I did it that this is a teacher. I was able to go inside myself, and I was able to peel myself like an onion and see who I really was. And that was important to me when I was young. And like I said, I considered it a great teacher. Of course, the first time I did acid, it was something I had always wanted to do. Right. So I was working in a lumber yard, and and I was talking to one of my coworkers, and he says, "Well, I can get you some." I said, "Well, great. So I bought 10 hits off of it, blotter. And so on my lunch break, I used to go to this graveyard and eat my lunch. So I go there and I've got the 10 hits, and I tear one off and I put it on my tongue, and I'm sitting there. Nothing's happening. Okay. Well, maybe it's low dose. I'll take another one. So I put a second one in. Sitting there. Nothing. It's like, that guy ripped me off. So I eat the other 8. Right. So I'm third. 10, right. And I'm sitting there. I finish my lunch, pack all my stuff up. I get in my car. I'm driving back to work, and I'm mad. I'm going to give this guy, a piece of my mind. And then about halfway back to the lumber yard, the road starts snaking. Right. And I'm like, oh, I'm feeling weird. I pull in, I park, I'm walking up there, and everything's different. I was like, what did I do? And so as I'm walking up there, my boss leans out the window and he says, "Freeman, get around back. You got to load, 300 2x4s on this truck." Okay. So how am I going to do this? All right. I walk back. How you doing? And I start pulling the lumber out, put it on the truck, and it's wiggling like snakes. These, 8-foot long 2x4s. Oh boy. So I got the truck loaded, went in, told the boss that I was sick. He let me leave. I went out to the reservoir set for the next 10 hours, give or take, staring out across the lake and watching the world unfold before me. So I was hooked. I was like, oh, this is all right. So yeah, so that was my first experience. So
I'm glad you had a beautiful
I went
experience.
I went into the deep end the first time.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, that's a three times would be a deep journey. Yeah. So it's interesting to think that that, I mean, I know a lot of kids are more risk averse. The younger generation are much more, or not, is risk averse the wrong way of saying it? They're less into taking risks. Yeah, they're more risk averse.
Yes.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing to see. It makes sense. It's just generational that happens, right? Responses to the previous generation and all that. But I wonder if that is good, if that would be helpful for them to maybe just take a few more chances in the psychedelic department or something like that. It's hard to say. It's always hard to say because everyone's so different and everyone responds differently. And if you don't have the right people introducing you to things with set and setting and stuff like that, it can get really ugly.
Yeah, it's obviously it's not a blanket cure, right? So there are some people that should never take hallucinogens.
Right.
And you know the personality types, you know, the people that you just know that, okay, this person is not going to react well to this. Yeah. And that comes from, right, from somebody with experience that recognizes that and spends some time. I mean, I remember I was in the desert Southwest. I was living, kind of moving from reservation to reservation. And when I was staying with the Navajo, I got to take part in a peyote ceremony.
Cool.
And before they ever let me take part in that ceremony, I sat for hours with the shaman, just talking, you know, and just, you know, basically shooting the shit. And so I said, "Oh yeah, great talk." And he said, "Well, I had to make sure that you were ready." Like, "Oh, okay, you know, well, that was good talk, you know." So and then, like, you know, an hour later I was puking my guts up, yeah, and having an amazing experience doing so. But yeah, so
yeah. How did you find peyote? What was that like? How did you find it compared to LSD and other things?
Totally different, right? So if you were to ask me my preference, you know, I prefer psilocybin.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, so it's very warm, but it's also very rough on your stomach. Like I said, I threw up, right, not long after drinking it. It tastes very foul. And there's just no way. And I wasn't the only one, you know, throwing up. The people that were very seasoned in it, you know, would throw up as well. And I guess that's just part of the process. So that part's very fun, but the hallucinations were much more vivid. Like so I'm in like a little sweat lodge, right? And so when I go to vomit, I leave the lodge, step outside, and I'm throwing up, and my eyes are closed, and you know, I just feel myself expanding. And then when I opened my eyes, I was like in the backwoods of Indiana in the winter, and it was cold, you know, and I'm in, like, you know, calf deep snow, and I'm seeing animals, you know, running, you know, out in the little field. I'm surrounded by, you know, trees, you know, ash trees, and there's some pine. There's a lake nearby, and I pretty much knew the spot. It was a little different, but you know, it was very similar to a spot, you know, near my home. And then you kind of blink, and then you're back in the desert, and you know, and it's cold there too because it's nighttime. But yeah, it was very transformative. I mean, I was in another place. You know, almost like I had teleported, you know, to that location in another time, and then snapped back. And it probably lasted, you know, that part of it probably was 10 minutes maybe. But then after that, you know, you're just kind of it was similar to a psilocybin buzz after that, right? So, you know, you're just, everything's so crisp. And my favorite thing to do, you know, on psilocybin is to stare at a tree. My absolute favorite thing. Sit out there, just stare at a tree and see every distinct leaf, perfect, crisp. And I can see each one individually, and I can see the subtle movements. And if I look at a cloud, I can see that cloud tumbling, you know, and all the energy in it. And you could just, I just love that connection.
Yeah.
You get that same energy, and it's coursing through you. And it just, yeah, it's a beautiful experience. I wish more people had the opportunity, and it's hard around here. And I stopped doing drugs of any kind when my son was born because of where I live.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to get arrested and go to jail and be separated from my kid. So now he's 18, so I'm starting to think, you know, okay,
you're there at his graduation, all beaming. He's like, "You proud of me, Dad?" You're like, "And happy for me."
It happened for me. But now
Be off with you, son.
I would vacation in Michigan. You know, it's like, all right, I'm going for a weekend in Michigan where it's legal. You know, and yeah, so.
Yeah,
but it's been a long 18 years. So.
Yeah, my parents were very, very anti-drug, unfortunately, because it led me to mistreat others who used, like in high school. Like I wasn't kind to them because I thought what they were doing was evil, because that's what I was told every day of my life growing up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I
thought your parents would have been different based on their
transcendental meditators, Maharishi, man. They were, you know, almost pretty much mandatory vegetarianism, veganism, almost. They're anti-gay, which a lot of people don't realize. Or Maharishi was. He's considered it unnatural. A lot of things, like very culty behavior that you see going on there. And yeah, like, you know, my whole life growing up, every time my dad saw someone smoking, which was often in the 80s, like, you know, they were smoking in all our restaurants. Like I'd go to family events and there'd be my uncles blowing smoke in my face, you know, and we'd be like coughing and choking, and no one cared. But when my dad would always take me aside and say, you know, the best thing we could do for smokers to put a bullet in each of their heads. And I would be like 6, 7, 8 years old when he'd be saying this over and over and over and over again. So it definitely influenced my younger life. I didn't even try weed till I was 24, you know, tried a cigarette when I was 18, but that was about it. Didn't drink. Yeah. So they didn't drink, didn't do anything, all of that stuff. Yeah. So that was too bad, because it took me a while to like realize that I had been, you know, misled. And worst of all, had been taught that it was right to abuse people who, you know, enjoyed those things, which is crazy to me.
Yeah,
now.
Breaking that type of indoctrination is hard too.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you know, is a real soul searching experience for you. I mean, and all kids go through that. You know, you're indoctrinated by your parents in various ways. You know, but that's extreme on your part. Yeah, right. So
yeah.
I didn't start. Let's see. I didn't drink anything at all until I was 18. That's when I started smoking. I didn't do drugs until the summer after I graduated high school, and then I didn't do acid until I was 19. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, I was kind of but most of my friends had been smoking and drinking since junior high, but I always thought it was, you know, body is a temple. I shouldn't do that stuff. And
yeah, you know, I think
I was a musician, right? And so like I wanted to look like Jimmy Page, so smoking a Marlboro cigarette and letting it hang, you know, while you're playing. Well, it just seemed natural.
That
so
takes
yeah.
a little practice.
So, what's that?
It takes a little practice.
Right. Yeah. Right. You know,
I remember the first band rehearsal where I was able to keep smoking while playing, and afterwards I was like, do I really want to start doing this? And I was like, no.
look, nothing looks cooler than when like you take your cigarette, and you put it, in the guitar, in between the strings. And
yeah, I did that, and then I almost burned the Gibson Les Paul Silverburst, and was like, oh, that's not smart.
Right. Yeah. So when did you start playing guitar?
I didn't start playing guitar till 2013, 2014. It was it was a later stringed instrument. So I was already like playing professionally on, 8-string bouzouki, citerns, and practicing Renaissance roundback lutes. And then I decided to get some guitar skills up as well. So, when I first started playing guitar, I was a full-time musician. So I started putting in like 5-6 hours a day, and picked up pretty quickly. And especially once I started realizing how it worked. Like, guitar is essentially an open-tuned instrument. Basically everything, it's sort of an E instrument, just like dadgad or bouzouki are D instruments, or CFAD if you're playing Greek style. Right. And once you understand that, and understand how the movements work, where all the chords are up and down the neck, then it was like, it was easier to wrap my head around than I actually thought. Right. It just takes time. It's just blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, muscle memory and all that. Yeah. So, I started playing. Let's see.
You play guitar?
Yeah, 17, I guess.
Cool.
I got a Teisco Del Rey electric that was had been in a guy's closet since 1964. He bought it because he was a Beatles fan and then never learned how to play it. So it sat there in his closet, and he sold it to $60. So and I just got it back. Right, my first guitar, and I just got it back. A buddy of mine, I had sold it to a buddy of mine in the mid to late 80s, and he just married a woman from Ireland, and so he was moving to Ireland, and he stopped by the house and said, "Hey, would you like to have this back?" And I was, "Oh, are you kidding me?" Yeah. So I was over the moon. So it was fun to play it again, because that's what I learned on. So it was great.
Yeah, cool. Very cool.
So I was in bands and stuff when I was younger, and I played a lot of classic rock, that kind of stuff. So.
Sweet. Yeah. I'm actually, after this interview, I'm actually meeting up with my friends, and we're going to see Jack White tonight at the Coliseum.
Oh, really?
Yeah, wow. Yeah. They got seats on sale for like $25 in the bleachers, and last night I just bit the bullet and got a floor seat so I could go right up to the stage, and that should be fun. I'm excited. It'd be a fun night.
So what's the ticket there run you?
100.
Like $100. Yeah,
100, okay. 150, 160. Yeah.
Because we were just looking at tickets to go see Stevie Nicks, of all people, right? But we were like, oh yeah, well, I'd seen her a few times back in the 80s. I was like, oh yeah, that might be kind of neat to go see her. And the lawn seats were $150. And if you wanted it close to the stage, you were getting up into the $2,000 range.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? Who is going to pay that? It's like, I don't want to be that, the old guys. Whoa, back in my day, but I can remember going to see, Jimmy Page for, I think, and I was amazed. It was like $1,850 for, really good seats, or I Concrete Blonde, and I could reach out and touch Johnette Napolitano's leg, and I paid like, $20, for that's, it's like, yeah, that's really hard for me to think in terms of triple digits on ticket prices. So, but I mean, they got to make, I get that, but.
Well, sort of. I mean, it's a little messed up these days. Live Nation's charging like crazy fees, like $30, $40, $50 service charge fees, a chunk of which goes to the Saudi royal family who owns part of it. So it's like, what are we doing? Like, what happened to this? Is not good for the bands at all. It's not good for live music at all. Yeah, I got tickets to the Tea Party just for August, their show in August, and it's just 1,000-person venue, a small venue. The ticket was still over $100.
Wow, yeah.
And all the tickets are the same, right? So it's like, yeah, things have changed, man. But hey, at least so what's exciting is all these artists are coming through town now that the restrictions are changing and stuff. So I'm definitely
Right. Well,
going to miss out on my chance to see live music now after what just happened with COVID. I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to see these people because I might never get to see them again.
right. Who knows when the next thing comes along and they lock things down again, right? Yeah. And I feel bad for musicians, right? Because there are no album sales anymore, right? You know,
Oh yeah.
that's the only way for them to make money is on the road. And that's, you know, you're a professional musician, you know, that's hard. That's a hard life, you know, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, post COVID, being a professional musician's not so easy anymore. That's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't even focus on it, right? But that's God, what do you do? What do you say? I don't know. I don't know what to say about the fact that like these companies like Spotify and iTunes can just not pay us anymore. It's really crazy. They kept so much of our royalties that it's like you know, the number's really high and there's nothing we can do. And you can just remove your music and
then right,
yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. So
I wonder if YouTube would be a better venue or something like that for music, you know, because then you get more of a live experience, you know, where you're performing for a camera. And then if you have enough followers and you make income from that.
well, like I use the intro to my podcast is the melodic bridge breakdown of one of my songs. It's so it's got some chanting and Nokia and Thoth invocation in the background, and it's a beautiful little breakdown of instruments and effects from the master track. We use samples from the actual tracks instead of artificial samples. And because of that, YouTube permanently has all my videos demonetized and will never monetize them because as far as they're concerned, I don't own my own music anymore.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I've been through the ropes with them and there's just nothing to be done about it. So all the money that would have gone to me goes to the distributor, and the distributors just don't pay us anymore because they don't have to. Actually, they just charge us instead of a royalty check, which we used to get, we just get every year we get a $1.50 charge from them.
Wow.
I know. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've talked to industry people and they're like, yeah, we can get your music off there. It's like, I don't want my music off there. I want to put it back on there and get paid for it. They're like, oh, well, yeah no.
Oh, we can't do that.
That's not going to happen. So
yeah, that's bad as one of my best friends, his dad, who's now passed, sadly, but he was a songwriter in the 60s, and he wrote some stuff recorded by like George Jones, Conway Twitty, country artists like that. And so the royalty checks still come in, and it's like they'll be like 14 cents, 36 cents. It's just like the check, the actual physical check probably costs more than the royalty that you're sending. But that stuff adds up. I mean, he used to make obviously a lot more money the closer to when the song actually came out. That kind of stuff's not really as popular as it once was. But still, it's just kind of, somebody's making money. It's not the artist. So.
Yeah, it'll be actually very very interesting to sort of see how the music world changes over the remainder of our lives and where it ends up. Fortunately, people will keep playing music because the live shows coming back. That's a good thing. I mean, that assuming our world lets that happen. But when the live performances became important again, all of a sudden, all of these rock stars and musicians who were mainly recording artists but sucked on stage got knocked out of the the culture a bit. And that, to me, that was a really good thing because there's nothing more depressing than enjoying someone's album than going to see them live and be like, oh, they suck.
Yeah, right.
Total shit.
They were using session musicians.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. Well, I can't remember now. Somebody was talking about how they were watching they were watching a band live, and they were watching the lead guitar player, and they were seeing him play, and he's sort of playing the solo. And he said, that's when I realized, oh, they had somebody else play that, and he learned it as close as he could, right?
Yeah.
They had some session guy that ripped off this great solo that you hear on the record, and this guy's kind of limping through it, so okay, all right.
Yeah, that's always a fun trick. I mean, that's an old problem. The Beatles had that problem too, right? Like, what's the song? While My Guitar Gently Weeps. None of them could play an even remotely decent guitar solo for that song. None of them could at all. So they had to bring in Eric Clapton.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with using the session players, but like the live show can still be good, even if you can't play like fucking Eric Clapton. And the Beatles proved that, right? So they still played that song beautifully live, even when they didn't have Eric Clapton.
Right.
Yeah.
So what you do in a situation like that is you bring the session players along, right?
You can't afford it, yeah.
Right. I was thinking about Fleetwood Mac, right? Which I loved growing up. And then they had that whole drama thing where they kicked Lindsey Buckingham out of the band, right? And so anytime they kick Buckingham out of the band, they always got to replace him with 2 or 3 other people, because he's an amazing guitar player, right? And so and when they toured here recently, if you watch and look in the background, in the shadows, there's another drummer, there's another keyboard player, there's a couple of guitar players, a bass player. They got a whole band behind them that are playing along with them. And I'm like, that's really odd, right? How many bands do that?
Well, a lot of people don't even realize, like, when they see like the big amps stacked on each other behind the guitarist, and they see, the wall of amps, or even just 4 or 5 big amps or whatever, the Marshall stacks and stuff. Most of the time, that's actually not what's producing the guitar sound. Usually the guitarist actually is also running into a very small, not necessarily shitty, but a small amp behind, and that's what's mic'd, because that will produce way better sound, especially in a big place like that, than a wall of mics would actually create just mud.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Right.
You had like 20 amps, all Marshalls, all pushing out sound. That would be like that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, right.
You want a good clean sound, good clean signal, and then you boost it through the main. So, but it looks cool. That's why they do it. It looks cool. Often those amps are actually just not. There's nothing inside them. They're just external. They're just the boxes. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
So yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about music. I had no idea about your musical side, so it's really fun to get into.
Oh yeah, that was my ambition at one time, was to be like singer songwriter kind of thing, and and that I consider that all a integral part of my magic also. So it's all interlinked. So.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about music is you don't have to be doing it professionally to do the same thing for you.
Right. Exactly.
I've had so many friends that quit gigging because they wanted to focus on their music, and they're like, you have no idea how many new songs I've written and recorded demos for this year. Yeah, and it's like, good. Yeah. And that's it. When you're performing, anywhere from 2 to 6 nights a week, like, you don't have much time to develop in certain areas. You do develop in the performance area for sure, but you might not be composing any new masterpieces unless they just get inspired like that, which is also fun.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the good thing about like a band that's improvisational, right? So you take like Led Zeppelin, for instance, where they would sit there and improvise, and then they would write songs on the stage, and then we'll remember that bit, and then we'll put it on an album, later. Rip off the lyrics from some unknown blues singer, and we got a hit. So
yeah. I know. To quote Ian Anderson, if you took his lyrics and Page's and Zeppelin's music, they'd have quite a good little rock and roll band.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes ever, and
it's a great way to get kicked off opening for Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
Though could you imagine if seeing like going to a show and the opener is Jethro Tull and then Zeppelin? That would have been fucking insane.
That would have melted my. Yeah, I'm not quite old enough to have, right? I just missed being of that age, so like as I'm growing up, it was Kiss and Cheap Trick and those bands, right? So that's yeah, I just missed it, so
Yeah.
it would have been something that,
I always tell my mom she was actually born at the perfect time in all of human history to be alive. And she's like, always gives me this look like, how dare you? What? It's like, because, for her, it was the 50s. I'm like, but you were 20 in 1968. Like,
right.
For someone who likes music, that just is like, it's like it's the grail. You are the grail. Your life's the grail. You're 20 in 68. You literally, had you not been busy meditating and with Maharishi, you literally could have seen everyone and heard everything. And when I think of having that opportunity, like, oh my god, like, I'm glad that I got to have the 90s, because we had some good musical stuff happen in the 90s.
Sure.
Since then, every 5 years there's maybe one new band I fall in love with or one new artist I fall in love with, but it's not like it was in the 90s, where it was like one thing after the next, like Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, just the list just didn't stop. Jeff Buckley, like it was amazing.
Yeah, one of the most amazing shows I ever saw was Alice in Chains was the opening act. It was, let's see, Alice in Chains, Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, Testament, I think. It's just like a little, but I was there for Alice in Chains. That's the only reason I was there. And they were the opening act, That's right when Facelift came out. So yeah. The 90s were a good scene. Yeah. So
yeah.
And I had just gone back to college then. Right. So after, like, I'd done like 3 years working in a factory, and then took a buyout and went back to college, and bought a Les Paul, and right. And so
nice. Yeah.
That was a good decade. So
sweet. Yeah. When did you get into publishing and writing seriously?
Oh yeah, so that was okay. Yeah, that's an interesting story. So I was always a storyteller, right? So, but I'd never really written a novel or anything. I'd written here. I was a dungeon master, right, since 1978. So storytelling came easy. But so I got married in 2000, and the week of my wedding, I lost my job. So I started my new marriage, looking for work. And I wasn't having a lot of luck at first. So my wife, in her infinite wisdom, said, well, you're always talking about writing. Why don't you write a novel while you have this time? So that's how it happened. She would leave for work, and I would sit down and I would write while she was gone. And then when she got home from work, she would read what I wrote. So that meant I had to produce every night. I had to produce something that she could read, so that she knew that I wasn't just laying around, smoking dope and playing video games, right? So I had to sit there at the typewriter and make something happen. So, and that was a real bonding experience for us, as newlyweds. So I finished that first novel, and shortly after that, it was kind of optioned for a film. I'd met a guy online who worked for Dimension Studios. So they took it into development for like 2 years. They had me rewrite it a few times. It was like a horror novel, sort of vampires, werewolves, that kind of stuff, right? So Dimension at the time had made like I can't even think of the movie. Underworld. Yeah. So that was right. That was successful. So they were like, oh, okay, we got another vampire werewolf book. Yeah, we can turn that into a film. So then they came out with a movie called Cursed, and it bombed big time. And so then they came to me and said, hey, look, we're going to go a different direction. And so they gave me the book back. It had never been published, So then I started shopping it to publishers, got it published. I wrote a couple of sequels to it. They did pretty well. And yeah, so it just kind of all came from me, losing my job and my wife and, kind of prodding me to actually do it.
Sounds like you did not fuck up when it came to your choice in partners.
No, I did not. Yeah.
No.
So we met at we both worked at Walden Books. God rest its soul. I loved that bookstore chain. So yeah, we met there in '98, kind of fell in love pretty quick, and got married in 2000. So yeah, she's been wonderful. She gave me the best gift I ever got, was my son. So yeah, spectacular. I'm really lucky.
Yeah, it's awesome. And how many books have you written, and how many have you published, and
let's see,
how many more are you gonna write and publish?
Yep. So I've published 6 or 8, and I've been in a lot of anthologies, that kind of thing. So I kind of want to write a couple of summation books, just to tie up the different series I have. It's a pretty intricate world that I created, and I'd like to kind of wrap that up for the people that have been reading it all these years, and give them a nice bit of closure. And then just focus on writing short stories, here on out. That publishing is so different now, and it's what I'm feeling like I want to do is to write nonfiction. I'd like to write about ghost hunting, about that whole paranormal field.
Yeah.
And I've written for magazines and stuff before, articles and stuff, but yeah, that's kind of where my head's at now. Is I kind of want to focus more on my life experiences, and maybe share the knowledge that I've gained in all these years. So and maybe learn some new things along the way. So
Do you find there's much exciting stuff going on in ghost hunting these days?
Well, okay. The problem with the paranormal field is television, as you can imagine. So there's just a plethora of paranormal entertainment that kind of alters the way people look at things. And I've got a lot of friends that are involved in these productions, and they're quality investigators, but the shows themselves, they've got to make money, and I think a lot of the equipment looks good on TV, but I don't think it really works practically. So you got that problem. So you've got all these new people that are investigating, and they're using all the toys, they're spending all the big money on that stuff. And I think it's harmful overall to investigations. And I'm the kind of person who, I don't think you're ever going to satisfactorily prove anything to anyone. So I don't even try. Right. So I don't go out and experience the paranormal and investigate locations to prove to somebody else that, hey, here's this thing that happens. I'm there using it in much the same way I approach magical practice. I'm there to converse with unseen intelligences, and I try to create a dialogue, and I try to learn from whatever entities are in these locations and have an honest conversation with them. Now that's very difficult, right? Because we're in separate dimensions. But that's the way I view it. So if you don't believe that ghosts exist, me showing you a video of a full-bodied apparition that steps through a doorway into a hallway, you're not going to believe that that's what it is, right? Nothing that's as good evidence as you're ever going to get. If you play EVP for people, that you pick up in these locations, and they're not going to hear it. They'll refuse to believe it they think you're faking it or whatever. So I quit trying to prove this stuff to people a long time ago, and I just treat it, like I said, like it's a ritual. And I go in and I try to make contact and try to find out what's going on. Sometimes, most times you're dealing with just residual energies. But every once in a while, you get to meet that intelligent figure, and you can, relate. And then sometimes you come across negative things too. And there's, as you are more than aware, as a person who deals in the magic realm, there's a myriad amount of different entities out there that you can come into contact with. So that's always exciting. It's certainly a thrill. So.
I just talked to Daniel Rekshan, who did this book, of course, which is sort of his kind of scriptures channeled work, and it's all Enochian magic. This is all the aethers and working through all the aethers and channeling them, and to talk to extraterrestrials and extra dimensional beings and all that stuff. Very cool. Obviously, that was a lot of fun, and he's just 9 hours down the road, so maybe there'll be some events in the future that we can
right.
Like that would be cool, right? I'm all for that. I'm here for that. But another one that I've just been enjoying, I haven't actually been able to stop reading it since I picked it up, is Jenny Tyson using a spirit box to talk to Edward Kelly and John Dee, with the help, with using Enochian magic and the help of her husband, who one or two people has heard of, Mr. Donald Tyson, right?
What?
So this is Jenny Tyson using a spirit, that's what you call a spirit box, the scans the radio stations fast.
Yep. Sure.
And when I got to that part, I was like, oh, that's what you're doing here. I'm like, okay. I was like, I'm really glad I'm talking to Bob Freeman coming up, because sorry, not Bob Freeman, Bob iPhone. Because I've got questions, or more maybe I don't actually know what questions I should be asking, actually.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
But maybe you might have some ideas there for me as I work through this sort of really interesting book, because it's the first time actually I've heard of someone using, just like Rekshan is the first time I've heard of someone seriously using Enochian magic to talk to aliens and engage dream work and that sort of stuff, right? Because he's not about the aliens in the sky so much as also the internal states and realms and extra, all of it. And she's then on this other sort of angle, which is very different. It's very sort of exciting for me, especially as I'm focused on de-purism these days, which is very, it is what it is, folks. But you sort of have to, after 20 years of Golden Dawn style Enochian, you have to switch it up a bit.
Well, it makes me think of, are you familiar with John Tenney?
John Kenny?
Tenney.
No.
Tenney. He's let's see, he had a show called Ghost Stalkers, right? So, but anyway, he's more of like he's a jack of all trades investigator, right? UFOs, Bigfoot, aliens, the whole smorgasbord. But so a few years back, he had said, why don't people use Ouija boards to talk to aliens, right? And when he said that, it clicked. It's like, why wouldn't you? And that's exactly what this woman's doing with this ghost box, right? And that's what the other guy's doing, using Enochian magic to converse with other intelligences. That's exactly the kind of thinking outside the box that the esoteric and paranormal field needs, because you've got all these tools. Let's figure out a new way to use them and make these connections. So yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I need to find that book.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's on Amazon, but I'm very impressed with Jenny Tyson. I don't agree with every view Donald Tyson has on Enochian magic, for example. Like they don't think that you should ever use it for anything mundane or to gain things, but like that doesn't make, to say that goes against the inherent purpose of Enochian magic, which is a claim that's made, to me is too much out of step with the grimoire tradition to be taken very seriously, because the grimoire tradition is packed with using the planetary intelligences, angels and spirits to affect things and change in our daily lives. Like that is
right.
To say that that's not what that tradition of magical history is about, you just can't, it's just not true. And so the idea that Dee would have been compiling a entire planetary heptarchial grimoire system of magic with these Enochian beings that affect change through these planetary rays or currents, it doesn't hold up, right?
Right.
It's just it doesn't make sense. It would be such a break from tradition, almost like he was creating something entirely new, which the Enochian system isn't entirely new. It's a new thing, but it's a rendition of from within the tradition, from within the history of magic, which is not something that every new practitioner makes up a new version of as we go. No,
they don't. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went through that whole period, right? So I read all of Tyson stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I learned a lot from it, you know. But like you said, you know, I had problems with things, you know, but yeah, but you run into that with anybody, you know, that has you know, I'm sure, you know, you've read your way through Crowley and Rigardi and Mathers and everybody else under the sun, and you always find things that you disagree with, and that's the beauty of it. You know, that's and sometimes they were purposefully deceptive, which always annoyed me. You know, wait, why are you hiding this? You know, it's you changed this. You know, this is wrong. You did that on purpose to figure. You know, just you know, but it's neither here nor there. It's
so what do you think about the use of paranormal parapsychological techniques with the scrying and evocation? Do you think that should add, how does that affect the importance of skepticism and testing information? You know what I'm getting at? Like,
yeah, so I think ghost boxes are funny things. Let's focus on that for a second. If you think about what it is, it's just a broken radio that's cycling through radio stations slowly at times, and you get that choppy, right? And your brain starts putting things together and making, you know, recognizing. I've had a real love-hate relationship with them. I'm not sure, you know, it's one of those instruments that I'm not completely sold on, but I have seen results come from them.
Yeah.
Using it in a ritualistic sense makes sense to me, because if nothing else, you're tapping into your subconscious. I know. Are you familiar with the Estes method? And so these guys basically used a ghost box when they were investigating the Stanley Hotel. But what they did different is they put headphones on. So one person is listening to the ghost box, and he's got a blindfold or a hood over his head, so he cannot see anybody else in the room. He can't hear anything other than the ghost box. The people outside start asking him questions, and he is just repeating whatever he hears over the ghost box.
Yeah,
that works, right? I think the ghost box on its own is a little more iffy, but using that technique, boy, you get a lot out of that. I mean, you really do, you know, because when you start seeing the questions be answered in that way, you realize that there is something else involved in the situation. Now, whether that is an actual outside intelligence or it's that collective unconscious that is kind of creating a narrative. Either way, it doesn't matter, right? It's still magic, and it still works. It's still educational. It's sort of like what Crowley said about, it doesn't matter if it's real or not, because the effect's the same, right? So, but I would recommend to you, if you have access to a ghost box in that way, to try that method.
I saw it used in Hellier for the first time.
Yes, exactly. Yep, that's they used it to good effect in that, and I really enjoyed Hellier. It was weird. It came at me. Well, for one thing, it was kind of the pandemic, right? So it came at just the right time, kind of a perfect time when I needed to see it. And it reminded me so much of me and my friends in like the late 80s, early 90s, when we used to explore around here, because, they were looking for goblins in Kentucky near a town called Somerset, right? So I grew up here near a town called Somerset, where we had this area called Hobbit Land. They called it Hobbit Land because the Native Americans there used to converse with these little people, right? And so the hippies around here called them hobbits. But what they were is this impish goblin-like race that lived here near a town called Somerset. So I'm watching Hellier and I'm like, God, this is me in my 20s. Us, out exploring the caves and stuff, or in this area, and it's just like it was a weird synchronicity. So yeah, I loved Hellier. It was so well put together. Great filmmaking. Had a great narrative structure to it, and they were good investigators, right? It was nuts, right? So, but yeah, it was great. I'm assuming you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I watched the first season. I think I saw all of it. It's long, right?
Well, the first season was like really short, like 4 or 5 episodes, and then season 2 was traditional, like maybe 10 or 13 episodes, something like that.
I'm pretty sure I've watched it for like around 8-9 hours, so I've seen a lot of it, but not every.
Yeah, you probably saw most of it. Yeah. So.
I keep thinking that maybe I should send them, because they have the cursed traveling objects thing.
Oh, yeah.
I keep thinking I should send them my cursed object right here, but every time I unwrap it, I pull it out, like something bad happens. So maybe just best.
Did you just pull it out just now?
But I didn't unwrap it.
Oh, you didn't unwrap it. Okay, good.
Yeah, okay. It's from the set of The Exorcist.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah. So I saw The Exorcist.
Yeah, it looks scary as fuck too. It's terrifying.
I was 8 years old.
I'll show you after.
I watched The Exorcist in a drive-in at 8 years old. When it came out, it freaked me out. And that's when I started,
At 8 years old. Oh shit.
Yeah. So I saw The Exorcist that summer.
And this is back in the day.
That book on magic, and that's also when I started. Yeah, so I didn't tell this story. I'll tell this really quick. So I grew up on a horse farm out in the country, right? It was my grandparents. They had like 60 some acres. And my mom and dad and me and my little brother, we lived in a trailer in the corner of it in a copse of ash trees, right? So my mother, she had issues. So they bought a second trailer, and me and my little brother lived in that second trailer. And mom would come over and look after us and such, but we had our own trailer. So I had a door that went to the outside. So age of 8, every night leaving that trailer, and we had a graveyard about a quarter of a mile from our house. So I'd walk up that country road and I would climb up in the old oak tree there and wait for ghosts. which that's when I saw my first apparition. But that little graveyard was fantastic, right? So you had all these urban legends associated with it. So back then it had a fence that surrounded it with a big wide gate. And if a woman would walk up there and open the gate and go in, she passed with no problem. But a man, when he opened the gate would swing back and hit them, knock them down or whatever, right? So it would attack them. So young kids went out there all the time. And it's a tiny little cemetery, a couple hundred people buried in it is all. So all that stuff was happening at the same time. Me finding the magic book, me sneaking out and looking for ghosts in that graveyard, and and The Exorcist taught me a lot about the occult. It lit a fire under me. And you got to remember, at that time, that's like when Kolchak the Night Stalker came out, and the Norlis tapes, and all these great kind of occult detective like fictions, in cinema. So everything kind of coalesced into this, and Amityville Horror wasn't too long after that. You were kind of doomed. We're watching Leonard Nimoy on In Search Of on Saturdays, and watching the Warrens, out, exorcising demons, or Hans Holzer chasing ghosts, Sybil Lee casting spells. Yeah, it was a good time to be alive.
Wow. It's interesting to me. I've never heard about that time from that perspective. I didn't know that. Yeah.
We were inundated with the occult in the 70s. That's when all the UFO stuff was going on, all the Bigfoot sightings and stuff. All that stuff was happening in that early part of the 70s. My parents were born in Arkansas, and so they were raised in the area of Boggy Creek, where they had the swamp monster down there, right? That was sort of like a Bigfoot creature. And they had all these weird urban legends from Arkansas that they brought up here. And so I was raised on those weird ghost stories, from the Ozarks. And then, being here, this area is nothing but, Indian land, obviously, Indiana, right? There were tribes everywhere here. But so the local Indians that still lived around here, like Chief Godfrey, he would come, and he would tell you stories about, witches, and how they had a witch war. And if you go out to the Indian cemetery, everybody died the same time, right? All these did it. And he said, well, yeah, it's because there was a witch war then, and we were casting curses at each other because half the tribe wanted to become white and the other half didn't. The ones that wanted to become white won, right? So that entire tribe, the Mississippi, or the Miami Indians, they traded their tribal identity in exchange for U.S. citizenship. And they turned over all the land in exchange for them being, U.S. citizens. So now they're fighting, trying to get their tribal rights back. But yeah, so they don't really exist. There's a corporation called Miami Indians.
Wow.
Right. But so they had this big war, where he was explaining, we were casting spells and people were dropping like flies, dying.
Jeez.
It's like, and so you're a little kid listening to this, you go, yeah, that's amazing. So this is a great place to live, especially at that time, 70s.
I always heard that the 70s were very occult, but it's hard to get a picture of exactly how much. So, I mean, you see all the books, especially the massive amount of paperbacks they were putting out in those times, books that are now very hard to find, right? We're very
right.
They're doing mass market paperbacks of Regardi and R.G. Torrens and a lot of these other ones. So yeah, I guess the piece we often forget is the culture that went along with it, is how into it actually people were.
Right. Yeah. And it was an extension of that, the hippie idealism of the 60s, and how it kind of took a dark turn in the 70s, right? Because all the drugs they were doing in the 60s and everything was peace and love, man. Suddenly in the 70s, they're all addicted, right? They got serious alcohol problems and all that hippy dippy magic love stuff that they were doing then. Well, then you got the Charlie Manson stuff.
Yeah.
Led into the 70s where it's all a little darker, and that's where you get the Exorcist, Omen, and all that stuff. So, but the occult was just inundated in culture. It was everywhere you looked. So, and as a kid growing up, I mean, that's why I was saying, here in Converse, this tiny little Bible Belt town, we had a terrific occult library. In our you go in there and it was all there. It was amazing. It's
different era entirely. I mean, even your president felt comfortable saying that that the successes were achieved through psychics. With that one significant, the president was asked, "How do you find this person?" "We used our psychic," and everyone laughs. He's like, "What?" That's funny,
right?
You don't. Well, it's too bad we can't get that level of honesty from presidents these days. It would be great if they would just be like, "Yeah, we used our alien spaceships."
Right? Yeah, Ronald Reagan consulted astrologers all through his presidency, right? Ronald freaking Reagan. He's using astrologers to make decisions.
Yeah,
that's something else. Not to mention the fact that it's Republicans doing
it's also. I mean, but Reagan especially is ironic because the reports are pretty convincing that their parties, like there was trays of drugs going around that anyone could use, and these were the just say no people, right? Nancy was
sure.
Yeah, so they were complete hypocrites, and good Christians consulting astrologers, magicians, and psychics, and this was the MK Ultra height, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
yep.
The beginning of Mockingbird and all that. Yeah. Yep. Things that are now we're only seeing the fruits of those labors now.
Exactly.
All the LSD indoctrination centers they had that were revealed in that book Chaos, which is really crazy. And it's amazing how we see those projects like actually their end game starting to play out in our lives today. Do you what was that? I was gonna ask do you see much? How would you compare the the popular rise of occultism in the 70s with the sort of revolution happening today? Because today to call it popular might even be an understatement, or it will be soon, perhaps, depending on how things go.
Yep, right. Well, you look at like Michael Hughes, what he was doing with the cursing Trump and all that stuff that kind of rose up. Yeah, the anti that whole kind of politicizing of occultism that's occurred, and I guess it's always been that way to a degree, but it seems much more ingrained now than it was. So it's interesting, right? So I try to keep my politics out of my magic personally, but it certainly is an effective tool. It's a way of bringing like-minded. Is it really that much different than like what Dion Fortune wrote about, when in World War II, when they raised a cone of power to protect England from the Germans, right? Which seemed to be very effective. It seemed to work. If you read any of her stuff on that stuff, like Gareth Knight and all that, they really go into detail. So I guess magicians have always come together to combat political evil, right? So I suppose it's an extension of that. But it certainly seems more strange now because people are so divided, and you're getting that same kind of war. Thelemites tend to be a little more conservative. I know you had James Wasserman, who was definitely, a conservative magician, and and how that comes into conflict with you know, the more left-leaning Wicca and such, right? So it's odd, and it's hard to take that kind of middle path through it all, which is what I've always tried to do. I try to, you know, be a person with an olive branch, you know, but it certainly works. I mean, if things are not going your way, then magic certainly is a tool to try to change that course, try to influence the culture. And yes, but it's not the 70s. Yeah. So
no. Do you think it's more popular today than it was in the 70s?
Magic?
Yeah.
Oh, far more. Yeah, there's a lot more, far more practitioners now than there ever was before.
Yeah, it's got to be the most in all of human history. I would suspect, unless we find out some stuff about Atlantis or Babylonia. But
right, yeah,
even then, it was still a rich person's game to a large extent. You had to sort of be able to read or write and afford parchment at least to get in the game.
Right. But you know, I mean, it's I don't know. I suppose there would have been a time. I guess I was trying to think of more pagan times, but even then, people would take part in ritual, but there was really usually only a couple of people that were, you know, actually magicians, and they were just using the energy of everybody else. But now, you know, it's everywhere, right? Now, granted, you know, if you break it down into individual sects, you're not going to find very many, you know, people involved in like Norse paganism. You know, or those numbers alone they're pretty small, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, a few thousand people globally. But I would guess, you know, tens of thousands, you know, people involved in witchcraft and several thousand people involved in, you know, ceremonial magic, and you start gathering all those people under one umbrella, and yeah, it's a sizable chunk of the population. And it's weird because of just how many people have like tethers, and like I'm noticing now, like a lot of paranormal groups, whereas it used to be they were typically Christian, right? Now they tend to be some form of pagan. I mean, almost, you know, I would say probably 60-40 now, which was very different, you know, 25, 30 years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah. And that's the way the culture is kind of evolving, right? They're turning away from the kind of traditional faith, and people are exploring, you know, paganism in bold new ways, which is it's fascinating and thrilling. But what worries me is how kind of faddish it kind of is for some. You know, it's kind of hip to be, oh yeah, you know, it's hip to, well, I'm a witch, you know, and they say that, but are they really? Or are they cosplaying as a witch online?
Yeah.
Like what are they doing at home? Are they actually, this is something Sean of Lux Files and I talk about a lot, is that how many of them are actually doing magic, right? Are they, you know, they might read the books and they might pretend to be magicians, but how many of them are actually doing magic? Because that's a big difference.
I was worried about that until I was at Pantheacon in 2020 before COVID, and then I complained to a few of the people there to get their opinions on it, and this one woman overheard me talking, and she just turned around as we were walking toward the elevator. She's like, it's absolutely great because it pays for all of this. And I was like, sold.
Okay, right.
I'm going to drop this concern from my brain. I didn't need it anyway, and I think your answer is perfect. Yeah, because you know, it was crazy for me to see so many thousands of people all in one place, and I thought I'd be lecturing in a small room. It was a huge hall packed with people. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Right.
Yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. It's the same way in the paranormal field, right? So you'll you'll go to a convention, and it's like, I can remember doing this a few years back, and it was like a couple of dozen people, and now, there's a couple thousand people here now. It's like, it's certainly changed, now, and the conventions keep getting bigger and bigger, and you see that in the paranormal field, the esoteric field. Although I just saw that down in southern Indiana, they have a big Thelema event, right, every year, and they had to cancel this year, which I was not expecting, because it had been all through COVID. Obviously, they weren't allowed to hold their festival, and so I was kind of looking forward to, and I was planning on attending this year just to see what it was all about. That's what you do, right, post COVID. But but they had to cancel it at the last minute, so for some kind of like health violations or something.
Oh, I think I know. So my friend Ray, who was a witch high priestess of a coven, she was on the podcast. She was telling me the other day that this event, it might be the same one, so I think she's sort of in your part of the States, got canceled. And I was like, really? After COVID, why they cancel? And apparently during that period, the showers weren't upgraded to meet health inspection standards, and so that event got canceled. That's the same one?
Yep, that's the same one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's just like maybe 2 hours south of where I live is where they hold that. So, and I've never gone. I've always thought about it, and I thought, maybe post, maybe this will be the time that I do go. And okay.
Yeah, I look forward to going to events like that again. I tried to get a book flight just to visit my friends in Austin last month, but they still won't let us leave. So unfortunately, it makes sense that events might. I thought it was because of the travel bans that things were getting canceled, but yeah, we're not quite out of the woods, and hopefully we will get out of the woods. But yeah, it's very cool that there's such big events in the States. I really wasn't aware of that until I was there at them, and I was like, damn, this is a good thing, because I really liked the research and stuff, and that like people are able to put out all these interesting books and manuscripts now because of the larger sized audience, and because there are people who are completely comfortable and get a lot out of just being an aesthetic witch or wizard, and nothing wrong with that. And there's people that just love the high-end books and buy all the $500,000-$600,000 books that come out from these boutique publishers, and they just are absolutely in love with those books. And I'm like, that's nothing wrong with that. That's a great thing.
Right, exactly. If you can get 10-20% of those people that actually stick with it and grow in it, that's a success, right? So, and there's nothing at all wrong with the outliers. It's not hurting anything, right? If they like the witch aesthetic, more power to them. I like it too. The more the merrier, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I'm lucky, right? Because I kind of host paranormal events at a local haunted place. A big 3-story, an old Oddfellows Lodge, right? So, so I have a steady flow of new paranormal investigators that come through on a very regular basis. So, so I, even all through COVID, I got to be around people and still keep my, toes in those waters. So
cool.
But that more and more, they're more pagan oriented. So it's.
Yeah, I want to talk maybe a little bit more about that. How about, do you want to tell people where they can find all your work and all of that stuff, and then we'll do a little bonus segment for my patrons to show my extreme appreciation. Thank you for everyone who keeps me being able to do this podcast as the world opens up, and I'm pulled in different directions to take advantage of different opportunities that are suddenly there again and can help some of us rebuild our lives. But I do want to keep doing this, and it really does mean a lot that everyone supports this and listens and all that stuff and shares it with their friends. So thank you. It's been great having you on, Bob. We're going to keep going, of course, but let the plebs know where they can find you.
Thank you. Right. Thank you so much.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. All right. So my website is occultdetective.com. Yeah, easy to find there. I'm on all social media as Occult Detective. So, you know, on Twitter, you can find me there, on Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, easy to find. Occult Detective.
I share a lot of your pics on Instagram, and as a result, the algorithm, I think, always keeps your posts up at the top. But it's just you keep sharing pics I like, so you share pics I like, so I share them because I'm like, that's a cool picture. People, you know,
it's funny. I see you more than anybody else.
Really?
Right? It's like as soon as I go on Instagram, it's just you, like, for like just scroll after scroll of something what you're posting, and then I get to other people, right? So I enjoy that.
So weird. That's so weird. I wonder if you will get seen more by someone if you keep sharing their stuff. I mean, none of us really know how the rhythm works, eh?
Right. But yeah, it's like we're tethered, right?
Yeah.
So that's great. You're right. So I love it, right? So it keeps me from having to go look you up and search your page out. You're just right there always for me.
I think my posts might be being seen again finally on Instagram, because they weren't for years and years, since like 2017, 2018, when I got really severely like, you know, people made clones of my accounts and all that stuff, similar to what Celeste Mott has to deal with nonstop. I think I have like 4 Celeste Motts trying to friend me right now, and they're all not her, right? Of course. And they all, and somehow they you know, they just take, I don't know why the Instagram lets those accounts stay alive while it takes down real people. It's insane.
Yeah, I don't get it. Not
insane.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to drive us in mental. But I think I've been shadow banned for a long time, as a fact. Like, my main public Instagram has, over the last 4 years, dropped from 7,000 plus things down to like 4,000. So it's dropped. That it shouldn't. Like, you know, I built it to 7,000 in a year, and then it just started going down, and now it just hit up to 5,000 again, and might hit to 6. But I think I got unbanned, actually. I think I might have been unshadow banned by when Damien Eccles followed me after the interview on both my accounts, because all of a sudden the interaction and I'm showing up more, people say. So I think that there's someone with the blue thing following you might change things in the rhythm.
Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And
I don't understand that about Eccles. I mean, I followed him from, you know, so that area of Arkansas is like where my family's from, right?
Yeah.
And actually, like, my uncle's nephew, right? So no blood relation, but he was the stepfather of the Hobbs boy, right? So I had like a connection to that whole case, you know, and I was just so enraptured by it, and I've had an opportunity to speak with Damien a few times, and you know, he's a great guy. You know, I loved your interview with him and his wife. Oh, it was, yeah. I mean, you handled that perfectly. That was, I really got a kick out of it. And I enjoy your show, right? A lot.
Thanks.
I listen to it all the time. In fact, just the other day, I rewatched the one with Storm, right? Because I was really taken with that interview, because you were talking about a lot of the things that, you know, that I had grown up with, like R.J. Stewart, right? So it was like, I loved his books. And it was like, oh, hearing you both talk about R.J. Stewart, I was like, whoa, wait, what? I never hear anybody talk about Stewart, you know, right? And here you guys are bringing him up and having a nice little chat about it. So,
well, I'm hoping to get R.J. Stewart on back with Storm and do a fairy folk roundtable with some other you know, experts in that field. That's a hope. My next roundtable is a Freemason one coming up, and it's just been it just takes so much work to coordinate with 5 other people around the world, all for one time.
Right.
So especially, like, you know, nailing down PD Newman took a bit of effort, and still not fully done. But that's my fault. I have to send more emails. It's hard when you get COVID and sick and all that. Blah blah blah. Anyway, thanks for being.
I love the roundtables. Right. I think those are great. I did one with Sean, with Michelle Belanger and Elfie Musick.
Yeah, I watched that.
It was, and that's just so much fun. You're getting ready, you get to bounce off of each other, and you know, the worst part is you get to talking over each other because you get so excited, you know, right? So it's, you know, a good host, right, keeps that tempered, and you know, and it's, I'm sure you've got that handled, right? So
no, I mean, well, yeah, obviously I've never spoke over anyone ever.
Yeah. It's hard. You know, I struggle with it because I just you know, right. It's my wife said, you know, you wind me up and you can't shut me up. So
yeah. But then
learning
again, you know, I also intentionally get drunk with guests and do interviews on mushrooms, and you know that's part of it. That's,
well, yeah, that's always the best conversations come out of that, right? If you
sometimes
think of
also the worst conversations.
yeah, the deepest, most meaningful conversations I ever had was with my friends under the influence, laying out under the stars, talking about everything under the sun, and how, you know, it all just interconnects. And yeah.
Storm wants to, next time he says he wants to do the interview after eating a gummy, so that'll be fun. So
yeah,
well,
good luck with that, right? Yeah, so
I'm down. It's I think we'll be okay. Plus you're discussing the fairies and the fae folk and folklore mythology. I don't care what, you know, that's always so much fun for me. It doesn't really matter what state of mind people are in. Just
right.
Just do it. Maybe, who knows what we'll say or what will be inspired.
It goes hand in hand, right? You know, the fae and the fly-agaric are interwoven. So
all right, people, we're gonna say farewell and we're gonna do a little bonus things. 420 here. Wow, perfect timing. 420. I have time to do a little bonus thing with you for my patrons as thank you. You can go check out the Patreon. The different tiers are really not about how much money I get, they're about how much merch you get. So the higher tiers actually just give more merch. For anyone who's curious about how it works, drop in for a month, check out the free content, leave again, that's all good. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Bob, for being here. And don't go anywhere, of course. We'll be right back with more. And thanks all for listening. Much love.